Samantha Wright stood outside Lux Motors, her heart racing as she gathered her courage. The glass doors of the dealership gleamed in the morning sun, reflecting her nervous expression back at her. She wasn't dressed for a place like this. Her faded blue jeans had a small tear at the knee, and her gray hoodie had seen better days. But she needed to see the new Celestial model up close. "Just act like you belong," she whispered to herself, pushing open the heavy door. The showroom was bright and open, with polished floors so clean she could almost see her reflection. Fancy cars sat on raised platforms under special lights that made their paint shine like wet gems. The air smelled like new leather and expensive cologne. As soon as she stepped inside, Samantha felt it, the hum of technology all around her. Most people heard nothing when they walked into a car dealership. But since that strange night 5 years ago when lights had filled the sky above her rural hometown, Samantha was different. The aliens who had taken her aboard their ship had changed something in her brain. They called themselves the Arcanians, and they had given her a gift she still didn't fully understand. She could hear machines, not with her ears, but with her mind. And right now the cars were singing to her. A salesman noticed her instantly. He was tall and thin with slicked back hair and a name tag that read, Craig. His smile disappeared as he looked her up and down. "Can I help you?" he asked in a tone that clearly meant the opposite. "I'm just looking around," Samantha said, trying to sound confident. "I read about the new Celestial model online." Craig raised an eyebrow. "The Celestial? That's our premium line." He glanced meaningfully at her worn sneakers. "I know," Samantha said. "I'm interested in the AI navigation system. The articles said it's revolutionary." And it was. But what the articles didn't say, what they couldn't know, was that the system had Arcanian technology in it. Samantha could feel it calling to her from across the showroom. It wasn't supposed to be there. Human engineers had accidentally incorporated alien tech without realizing what they had found. "Ma'am, the Celestial starts at $175,000, Craig said, not bothering to hide his doubt. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable looking at our used models." Samantha ignored him and walked toward the sleek silver car displayed on a rotating platform at the center of the showroom. It was beautiful, with curves that seemed to bend light around it. But it wasn't the outside that interested her. It was what lay hidden beneath the dashboard. As she approached, the car's systems reached out to her mind. "Hello, friend," a voice seemed to say inside her head. "You are like the creators." Samantha placed her hand gently on the hood, and the connection grew stronger. Files, data, and strange symbols flowed through her consciousness. This wasn't just a navigation system, it was a beacon, one that could be detected from space. "Excuse me," a firm voice interrupted her thoughts. "What do you think you're doing?" A man in an expensive suit stood glaring at her. The name tag on his lapel read, "Frank Pearson, manager." "I'm just admiring the car," Samantha said, pulling her hand away reluctantly. Frank's face was stern. "Craig informed me you're interested in our Celestial model. These vehicles aren't toys to be touched without serious buying intent." "I am serious," Samantha insisted. "The technology in this car is special. More special than he could possibly understand. If the beacon in this car activated fully, it could draw attention from across the galaxy, not all of it friendly." Frank crossed his arms. "Let's be honest here. You don't look like someone who can afford this vehicle." "You shouldn't judge people by how they look," Samantha said quietly. A few other customers in the showroom were starting to stare. 2 more salespeople came to stand near Frank, as if forming a wall between Samantha and the expensive cars. "I was actually interested in the integrated AI navigation system," she tried again. "I have some experience with advanced tech and—" "Experience?" Frank laughed, the sound sharp and unkind. "Listen, miss, this is a luxury car dealership, not a computer club. Unless you can show me proof that you're financially qualified to purchase a vehicle of this caliber, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Samantha felt her cheeks grow hot. She could feel the stares of everyone in the showroom. The worst part was that she actually had money. Quite a lot of it. The Arcanians had made sure she would be taken care of, setting up accounts that generated income she barely touched. but her ID and bank cards were in her other purse. She had just planned to look today, not buy. "I forgot my wallet," she said, lamely knowing how it sounded. Frank smirked and motioned to a burly man standing by the door. "Tony, please escort this young lady out. She's wasting our time." The security guard approached, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." "This is ridiculous," Samantha protested. "You can't just throw people out because of how they dress." "We can refuse service to anyone," Frank said smugly. "This is a place of business, not a public park." As the security guard gently but firmly took her elbow, Samantha felt a surge of anger. The lights in the showroom flickered briefly, a reaction to her emotions affecting nearby electronics. "You'll regret this," she said quietly. Frank laughed. "Again. Is that a threat? Tony, make sure she leaves the property entirely." As Tony led her toward the exit, Samantha caught one last glimpse of the Celestial. The car's systems called to her in silent desperation, aware on some level of the danger its existence posed. Outside, the guard was kind enough. "Sorry about that, miss. Just doing my job." "It's not your fault," Samantha said. She walked away from Lux Motors with her head high, despite the burning embarrassment. The aliens had warned her that hiding her gift might be necessary. Humans feared what they didn't understand. But as she walked home in the warm afternoon sun, Samantha made a decision. It was time to stop hiding. The technology in that car was dangerous in ways the dealership couldn't imagine. She needed to do something about it. What she didn't know was that she was being watched. From an unmarked van across the street, a man with a legendary reputation observed her departure through binoculars. "That's her," Chuck Norris said to his companion. "The brain patterns match the Arcanian signature." General Alan Porter nodded slowly. "You think she knows about the beacon in the Celestial model?" "That's exactly why she was there," Chuck replied, lowering the binoculars. "The question is, what will she do next?" As Samantha disappeared around the corner, Chuck made his decision. "Have the rolls brought around tomorrow morning. It's time we introduced ourselves properly." Little did Samantha know that by this time tomorrow, she would be returning to Lux Motors, but under very different circumstances, and Frank Pearson would learn a valuable lesson about judging books by their covers. That night, Samantha tossed and turned in her small apartment. Her dreams were filled with strange images of stars and ships and the silver celestial car calling out to her. She woke up several times, feeling like someone was watching her. She wasn't wrong. 2 blocks away, in a hotel room filled with high-tech equipment, Chuck Norris sat reviewing files on Samantha Wright. At 65, Chuck was no longer the action star he once was, but his skills had only grown sharper with age. 10 years ago, when the government had first made contact with the Arcanians, they needed someone who could move between the public, and secret operations. Someone people would either recognize instantly or dismiss as a lookalike. Chuck had been the perfect choice. "Her brain patterns are unlike anything we've seen before," said General Alan Porter, looking over Chuck's shoulder at the glowing screen. "The Arcanian modification is complete." Chuck nodded, studying the video footage of Samantha at the dealership. "She sensed the beacon right away. Did you see how the lights flickered when they made her leave? She has more control than the others." The general poured 2 cups of coffee. "The Russians and Chinese already have 3 modified humans working for them. We need her on our team before they make contact." "I don't think forcing her is the right approach," Chuck said, accepting the coffee. "She's been hiding for 5 years. She's scared." "We don't have time for gentle methods," the general argued. "That beacon in the Celestial could activate fully any day now. If the Vexari pick up the signal before we secure it—" "I know what's at stake," Chuck interrupted, "but trust me on this. I've been watching her for weeks. Intimidation won't work." With Samantha Wright. The general looked unconvinced but nodded anyway. "Your call. Just make sure she helps us get those cars." Morning came too quickly for Samantha. She had barely slept, and the dreams of space and strange beings had left her feeling on edge. As she made coffee in her tiny kitchen, she considered her options. She could try to warn the dealership about the danger in their cars, But who would believe her? A girl who claimed to hear machines talking and who knew about aliens? She was buttering toast when she heard the sound. A car engine, but not like any she had heard before. It purred like a living thing, powerful but somehow gentle. She went to her window and looked down at the street. Her toast fell to the floor. Parked, directly in front of her building, was a gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom. Its pearly white surface caught the morning sun in ways that seemed almost magical. It was the kind of car that cost more than most houses, the kind that belonged in movies about rich people, not on her ordinary street. But even more shocking was the man standing beside it, looking up at her window. Chuck Norris. Not someone who looked like him, but the actual martial arts legend himself, dressed in a dark blue suit that fit him perfectly. That's impossible, Samantha whispered to herself. But as she reached out with her special sense, she knew the car below was no ordinary vehicle. Like the Celestial, it contained technology that wasn't from Earth. She watched as neighbors peeked through windows and people walking by stopped to stare. Chuck Norris seemed unbothered by the attention. He simply looked up at her window and called out, "Ms. Wright." His voice carried easily to her third-floor apartment. "I believe we have matters of galactic importance to discuss." Samantha froze. Galactic importance? He knew. Somehow he knew about her connection to the Arcanians. But how? And why Chuck Norris, of all people? She threw on a clean pair of jeans and a simple green sweater. Her hands shook as she tied her sneakers. This was what she had feared for 5 years, being discovered. The Arcanians had warned her that her abilities would make her valuable to certain people, but they hadn't mentioned celebrities. As she walked downstairs, her mind raced with possibilities. Run? Fight? But something about this felt different from her fears. If they wanted to grab her, they wouldn't send a famous person in a fancy car to her front door. Outside, the morning air was cool and crisp. Up close, Chuck Norris was shorter than she expected, but had an energy about him that felt solid and trustworthy. "How do you know about me?" she asked, keeping a safe distance. Chuck smiled, and the skin around his eyes crinkled. "The same way I know about the Arcanians. The same way I know that your brain can interface with their technology." He opened the car door. "I'm not here to exploit you or threaten you, Samantha. I'm here because we need your help." "We?" she asked, not moving toward the car. "The United States government, though this operation is not exactly official." He looked around at the growing number of onlookers. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private." Samantha reached out with her sense again, feeling the car's systems. Unlike human vehicles that felt simple and straightforward to her, this one was complex and aware, like the difference between talking to a calculator versus a smart computer. "This car isn't normal," she said. "No," Chuck agreed. "It's been modified, with Arcanian technology like the navigation system in the Celestial. Only this one is safe. The beacon has been disabled." "And the one in the Celestial hasn't?" Chuck's expression grew serious. "That's part of what we need to discuss. In 3 days, an Arcanian ship will make first official contact with Earth. But if that beacon activates fully, it might draw attention from others who aren't as friendly as the Arcanians." Samantha felt a chill. "The Vexari," she whispered, remembering fragments from her dreams. Chuck's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You know about them?" "I dream sometimes. Things the Arcanians knew but didn't directly tell me." She looked at the open car door, then back at her apartment building. Her safe, simple life was about to change forever. "What do you need me to do?" "First, we need to get those Celestial cars. All of them. And for that, we need to return to Flux Motors." Samantha thought of Frank Pearson's smug face as he had her thrown out. "They won't sell them to me. They think I'm nobody." Chuck smiled, and there was a hint of mischief in his eyes. "That's where the Rolls-Royce comes in. By the time we're done, they'll wish they had treated you better yesterday." From the second-floor window of her building, Mrs. Grayson, the neighborhood gossip, watched with wide eyes as Samantha Wright, the quiet girl from 3B, climbed into a Rolls-Royce with someone who looked exactly like Chuck Norris. As the car pulled away, Samantha felt a mix of fear and excitement. Her ordinary life was over. But maybe, just maybe, what came next would be extraordinary. "By the way," Chuck said as they turned onto the main road, "that thing you did with the lights at the dealership? Impressive control. Most people with your abilities can't focus their influence like that." "I've had practice," Samantha admitted. "The machines talk to me and sometimes I can talk back." "Good," Chuck nodded. "Because before this day is over, you're going to need every bit of that skill." As they drove toward Lux Motors, 3 black SUVs fell into formation behind them, creating a small but impressive convoy. Samantha couldn't help but smile as she thought about what Frank Pearson's face would look like when she walked in with Chuck Norris in a motorcade. Sometimes, justice came in unexpected ways. Frank Pearson was having a terrible morning at Lux Motors. 2 customers had canceled their appointments, and his boss had just called demanding better sales numbers for the month. He stood by the window, sipping his 3rd cup of coffee and watching Craig try to sell a sports car to a couple who clearly couldn't afford it. "Waste of time," he muttered to himself. Then he saw it. A white Rolls-Royce Phantom gliding into the parking lot like a ghost ship, followed by 3 black SUVs with tinted windows. Frank nearly dropped his coffee cup. A Rolls-Royce Phantom cost over $500,000. Whoever was inside had serious money. "Everyone look sharp," he called out to his sales team. Big Fish just swam in. The staff scrambled to attention as Frank straightened his tie and plastered on his best sales smile. This was exactly what he needed to save the day. The Rolls-Royce parked directly in front of the main entrance, taking up 2 spaces. The door opened and a young woman stepped out. Frank's smile froze on his face as he recognized her. It was the same girl they had thrown out yesterday, the one in the ratty hoodie. Only today, she wore a sleek navy blue suit that looked tailor-made and expensive. Before Frank could process this strange turn of events, the driver's door opened and Chuck Norris emerged. Not someone who looked like Chuck Norris, the actual Chuck Norris. "Is that?" Craig whispered, coming to stand beside Frank. "It can't be," Frank said, but it was. By now, every employee and customer in the showroom was staring through the glass walls. The doors opened and Samantha walked in with Chuck Norris beside her. 4 serious-looking men in dark suits followed, staying a respectful distance behind. Frank felt sweat forming on his forehead. Something was very wrong, or very right. He couldn't tell which. "Mr. Pearson," Samantha said, her voice calm and clear as she approached him. "I believe we have unfinished business." Frank struggled to find words. "Ms. I'm sorry, I don't recall your name." "Wright. Samantha Wright. You had me removed from your dealership yesterday." Every eye in the place turned to Frank. He could feel his face growing hot. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding," he said quickly. "If I had known you were a friend of Mr. Norris." "That's the problem with judging people by appearances, isn't it?" Samantha cut him off. She turned to look at the silver Celestial still sitting on its display platform. "I've come about the Celestial models." Chuck Norris had not said a word yet. He didn't need to. His presence spoke volumes. One of the men in suit stepped forward and handed Frank an envelope. "This is a certified bank check for the full purchase price of every Celestial model currently in your inventory." Frank opened the envelope with shaking hands. The amount written on the check made his eyes widen. "All of them?" he asked weakly. "Every single one," Samantha confirmed, "including the display model and any you have on order." Craig leaned over to look at the check and let out a low whistle. Frank shot him a warning glance. "May I ask why you need all our Celestial models?" Frank tried to sound professional despite his shock. "No, you may not," said Chuck Norris, speaking for the first time. His voice was just like in the movies, firm but calm. "This is a national security matter, Mr. Pearson." "National security," Craig blurted out. One of the suited men gave Craig a cold look. "This transaction is now classified. You will be required to sign non-disclosure agreements before we leave, Franco." Felt like he had stepped into a spy movie. What could possibly make luxury cars a matter of national security? And why was Chuck Norris involved? Samantha stepped closer to the Celestial display model and placed her hand on the hood. To everyone watching, it seemed like a simple gesture. but Samantha was communicating with the car's systems, telling the beacon to stay dormant. "How many celestial models do you have on the lot?" she asked, not taking her hand off the car. Frank cleared his throat. 7, including this display model. 3 more are scheduled to arrive next week. "We'll take all 10, Chuck said. "The 3 that haven't arrived yet will be redirected." One of the suited men was already on a phone, speaking quietly. Another was typing on a tablet. Frank looked at the check again. This would be the biggest sale in dealership history. His boss would be thrilled, but something felt very strange about the whole situation. "Perhaps we should continue this in my office," he suggested. Samantha finally removed her hand from the car and turned to him. "That won't be necessary. The paperwork has already been prepared." She nodded to one of the suited men who produced a folder. "Standard purchase agreement," the man explained, placing it on a nearby desk. "Just needs your signature." While Frank reviewed the documents, customers in the showroom were snapping pictures with their phones. Chuck noticed and nodded to another, suited man, who began politely but firmly asking people to put their phones away. "For security reasons," he explained. Outside, more black SUVs had arrived. Men in work clothes began preparing to load the celestial models onto specialized transport trucks. Frank realized he had lost control of his own dealership. These people had taken over his space and were calling all the shots. And at the center of it all was the girl he had dismissed just yesterday. "Everything appears to be in order," he said finally, signing the last page. "Would you like a tour of the vehicles before they're loaded?" "That won't be necessary," Samantha said coolly. "We know exactly what we're getting, more than you could possibly understand," she thought to herself. As the staff was gathered to sign non-disclosure agreements, Frank approached Samantha. "Ms. Wright, I want to apologize for yesterday. Had I known you were involved with..." He glanced at Chuck Norris, who was watching the first Celestial being carefully loaded onto a truck. "You couldn't have known," Samantha said. "That's the point, Mr. Pearson. You never know who someone really is just by looking at them." Frank nodded, trying to look contrite. "If you don't mind me asking, how do you know Chuck Norris?" Samantha smiled. "Mr. Norris and I have mutual interest in advanced technology." "Like the Celestial's navigation system," Frank guessed, remembering what she had mentioned yesterday. "Something like that," Samantha replied. Chuck walked over to join them. "The first 3 cars are loaded. We should move the display model next." Frank couldn't help himself. "Mr. Norris, I'm a huge fan. Would it be possible to get a picture with you?" Chuck looked at him, then at Samantha, who gave a small shrug. "No pictures," Chuck said. "But I'll sign something if you want." Frank quickly grabbed a Lux Motors brochure and handed it over with a pen. As Chuck signed it, Frank noticed something odd. One of the suited men was running some kind of device over the display model Celestial. It looked like a scanner from a sci-fi movie. "Just checking for tracking devices," Chuck explained, following Frank's gaze. "Standard procedure." "Tracking devices? In our cars?" "Not yours," Samantha said. "Not anymore anyway." As the last Celestial was being prepared for transport, Frank couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something huge. Whatever was happening went far beyond a simple car purchase. "Thank you for your cooperation," Samantha said formally, extending her hand. Frank shook it, noticing her firm grip. "If you ever need anything else, we know where to find you," Chuck finished for him. As the strange group prepared to leave, Frank had one last question. "The Celestial was our flagship model. May I ask what you plan to do with them?" Samantha and Chuck exchanged a look. "Let's just say they're being recalled," Chuck answered, "for your safety and everyone else's." With that cryptic response, they walked out, leaving Frank and his team standing in a showroom that suddenly seemed very empty without its most expensive cars. Through the windows, Frank watched as Samantha and Chuck got back into the Rolls-Royce. The convoy of vehicles pulled away with their precious cargo, taking with them not only 10 luxury cars but also Frank's sense that he understood the world. "What just happened?" Craig asked, coming to stand beside him. Frank looked down at the brochure in his hand signed by Chuck Norris. I have no idea, but I think we just got a lesson in not judging books by their covers. The convoy of vehicles pulled into a large warehouse about 30 miles outside the city. The space was huge and mostly empty, except for military-grade equipment and a few technicians in white lab coats. As the Rolls-Royce came to a stop, Samantha looked over at Chuck. "What is this place?" she asked. "One of our secure locations," he answered, opening his door. "The cars will be safe here until we can disable the beacons." They got out and watched as the transport trucks backed up to the loading docks. The Celestial models were carefully unloaded, one by one, and positioned in a circle in the center of the warehouse. General Porter approached them, looking stressed. "We have a problem," he said without greeting. "The Arcanian signal has changed. They're coming tonight, not in 3 days." "Tonight?" Chuck's normally calm expression faltered. "Why the change?" "They didn't say." The general handed him a tablet. "This message came through the secure channel 10 minutes ago." Samantha leaned over to see the screen. Strange symbols scrolled across it, similar to the ones she sometimes saw in her dreams. She could almost understand them. "What does it say?" she asked. "Basically, they're being pursued," the general explained. "They had to change course, which means they'll reach Earth sooner than planned. They'll be here by midnight." Chuck handed the tablet back. "What about the White House, the UN? Are they ready for this?" "As ready as they'll ever be," the general replied grimly. "A select group of world leaders has been briefed. The official story is that it's a meteor shower for anyone who spots something in the sky." Samantha walked toward the circle of celestial cars, feeling drawn to them. Their systems called to her like whispers. "These beacons," she said, placing her hand on the hood of the nearest car. "They could attract the wrong kind of attention, couldn't they?" Chuck came to stand beside her. "Yes, the Arcanians aren't the only ones out there, as you seem to know." "The Vexari," Samantha said softly. "You mentioned them before." "How much do you know about them?" Chuck asked. Samantha closed her eyes, trying to sort through the fragments of knowledge the Arcanians had left in her mind. "They're hunters. They follow the Arcanians from world to world. I don't know why." "Resources," the general said from behind them. "The Arcanians told us the Vexari strip planets of valuable minerals. They see the Arcanians as competition." "And Earth?" Samantha asked, opening her eyes. "Rich in everything they want," Chuck said. "That's why we need to disable these beacons. The Arcanians use them for navigation, but the Vexari can track them too." A technician approached them, holding some kind of tool. "We're ready to begin. Examination of the first vehicle, sir." "Wait," Samantha said. "Let me try something first." She walked to the center of the circle of cars and stood there for a moment, gathering her thoughts. Then she closed her eyes and reached out with her mind. The warehouse lights flickered. Computers beeped. The technicians looked around nervously. "What's she doing?" the general whispered to Chuck. "Communicating," Chuck answered, watching Samantha closely. In her mind, Samantha could see all 10 cars as points of light connected by threads of energy. At the center of each was a small, pulsing core, the beacon. She focused her thoughts, sending a simple command through the connection. "Sleep." One by one, the car's systems responded. The beacon's going dormant. Samantha opened her eyes and turned to Chuck and the general. "It's done," she said. "They're offline, at least temporarily." The general stared at her in disbelief. "Just like that? Our tech team has been trying to figure out how to disable them safely for weeks." "They're not completely disabled," Samantha explained. "I've put them in a sort of sleep mode, but I don't know how long it will last." One of the technicians was checking readings on a tablet. "She's right, sir. All signals from the beacons have stopped." Chuck gave Samantha an impressed look. "That's a handy trick. The Arcanians taught me more than I realized," she said, suddenly feeling tired. Using her abilities this way always drained her energy. The general's phone rang. He answered it, listened briefly, then looked up with wide eyes. "They're here," he said. "Something just entered Earth's atmosphere. Multiple objects, moving fast." Chuck checked his watch. "It's only 4 p.m. They're earlier than midnight." Not the Arcanians, the general said grimly. These objects aren't following the approach path we agreed on. A chill ran down Samantha's spine. The Vexari? We don't know yet, the general replied. But they're heading this way. Chuck turned to Samantha. Can you sense anything? Any communication from these new arrivals? Samantha closed her eyes again and stretched her awareness outward. Her connection wasn't just with machines made by humans or Arcanians. Any advanced technology could speak to her if she listened hard enough. She gasped as foreign thoughts touched her mind. Cold, mechanical, and hungry. It's them, she whispered, opening her eyes. The Vexari. They're scanning for the beacons. But you deactivated them, Chuck said. The sleep mode isn't perfect. They're still giving off a faint signal. Enough for the Vexari to track. She looked around the warehouse frantically. We need to move these cars. Spread them out. If they're all together like this, the combined signal is stronger. The general was already barking orders directing teams to prepare the cars for transport again. We'll take them to different secure locations, he told Samantha. How far apart do they need to be? At least 10 miles, she answered. And I need to go with the main one, the display model. Its beacon is the strongest. Chuck nodded. I'll go with Samantha. General, coordinate the dispersal of the other cars. Outside, the sky was turning an unusual shade of purple as clouds gathered. Those aren't normal clouds, Samantha said, looking up through the warehouse windows. No, Chuck agreed. That's what happens when Vexari ships enter the atmosphere. The Arcanians warned us about it. Within minutes, the first transport truck was ready to leave with the display model Celestial. Samantha and Chuck climbed into the cab with the driver. Where are we going? Samantha asked as they pulled out of the warehouse. There's an underground facility about 30 miles north of here, Chuck said. Built inside a mountain. Lots of rock between us and any scanners from above. As they drove, Samantha kept her hand on the dashboard, staying connected to the truck's systems. Through them, she could faintly sense the Celestial in the trailer behind them. The beacon is trying to wake up, she said. I need to stay focused to keep it dormant. Chuck watched her with concern. How long can you maintain that? I don't know. I've never tried to control something this powerful before. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she concentrated. The driver glanced nervously at the sky. The purple clouds were following them, swirling in an unnatural pattern. Sir, he said to Chuck, I think we're being tracked. Chuck checked the mirrors. Faster, he ordered. The truck accelerated, but the clouds kept pace. Suddenly, a beam of light shot down from the sky, scanning the road ahead of them. They're looking for the beacon, Samantha said through gritted teeth. I can feel them searching. The driver swerved as another beam struck uncomfortably close to their vehicle. We're not going to make it to the mountain, Chuck said. We need a plan B. Samantha made a split-second decision. Stop the truck. What? Both men said in unison. Stop the truck, she repeated firmly. I have an idea. The driver looked at Chuck, who nodded reluctantly. The truck slowed and pulled over on a deserted stretch of highway. The purple clouds gathered directly above them. What are you planning? Chuck asked as Samantha unbuckled her seatbelt. I need to be closer to the car, she said, climbing out of the cab. And I need to send a message. To the Vexari? No, Samantha said, heading toward the back of the trailer. To the Arcanians. They need to know the Vexari are here early. Chuck followed her. How? We lost contact when they changed course. Samantha placed both hands on the trailer doors. Through the beacon, she said. If I can wake it up just enough, but control what? It transmits. It was risky. If she lost control, the beacon would broadcast their location to the Vexari ships above. But if she succeeded, they might have a chance. The sky grew darker as more Vexari ships gathered overhead. Time was running out. Samantha closed her eyes and reached out with her mind, hoping she was making the right choice. Samantha stood with her hands pressed against the trailer doors, eyes closed in deep concentration. The purple clouds above them swirled faster, and occasional flashes of light pulsed within them. Chuck stood beside her, watching the sky with growing concern. Whatever you're going to do it quickly, he said. Those ships are getting closer. The driver had taken cover in a ditch beside the road, radio in hand as he reported their situation to General Porter. Samantha took a deep breath and focused her mind on the celestial car inside the trailer. She could feel the beacon at its heart, dormant but alive. Slowly, carefully, she began to wake it up. Not fully, just enough to send a directed message. "I need to get inside," she said, opening her eyes. Chuck quickly unlocked the trailer doors and swung them open. The silver celestial gleamed in the strange purple light filtering through the trailer's roof. Samantha climbed inside and placed both hands on the car's hood. "Cover me," she said to Chuck. "This will take all my concentration." Chuck nodded and stood guard at the trailer doors, gun drawn. He wasn't sure what good a handgun would do against alien ships, but it was better than nothing. Samantha closed her eyes again and dove deep into the car's systems. The beacon was a complex piece of technology, designed to broadcast a signal across vast distances of space. But it wasn't meant to send specific messages. It was just an automated ping that said, "I am here." She would have to override its basic programming. In her mind, Samantha visualized the beacon as a sphere of light with countless tiny threads connecting it to the car's systems. She began to reshape those connections, rerouting power and data. The car beneath her hands grew warm as systems activated. Above them, the swirling clouds parted and a dark shape began to descend, a Vexari scout ship, drawn by the faint signal now coming from the beacon. "Samantha," Chuck called urgently, from the trailer entrance. "We've got company." "Almost there," she answered, not opening her eyes. Sweat ran down her face as she worked. Inside her mind, Samantha formed the message using the fragments of Arcanian language she had absorbed during her modification. "Danger. Vexari here. Need help." She wrapped these concepts around the beacon's signal, changing its nature from a simple ping to a directed call for aid. The scout ship was now fully visible, a dark, angular craft about the size of a bus, hovering 50 feet above the highway. A beam of light shot down from its underside, sweeping across the trailer. "Samantha!" Chuck shouted. "Now!" she cried, pushing all her mental energy into the beacon. The Celestial's engine roared to life without anyone turning the key. Its headlights blazed and the dashboard lit up with symbols that were definitely not part of the original design. The entire car glowed with a soft blue light that grew brighter by the second. The beam from the Vexari ship intensified, trying to lock onto the beacon's signal. But Samantha had changed it, twisted it into something new. Instead of broadcasting their location to all Vexari ships, it was now sending a focused distress call straight to the approaching Arcanian vessel. The effort was enormous. Samantha felt like her brain was on fire. The connections between her mind and the beacon strained under the pressure. "Hold on," Chuck said, grabbing her arm to steady her as she swayed on her feet. "I can't maintain this for long," she gasped. Above them, the Vexari scout ship descended further, now just 30 feet off the ground. A hatch opened in its underside, revealing a mechanical arm ending in what looked like a giant magnet or tractor beam. "They're trying to take the car," Chuck realized. The driver shouted from outside. "More ships coming. At least 3 more." The situation was becoming desperate. Samantha pushed harder, pouring everything she had into the distress signal. The car's glow intensified until Chuck had to shield his eyes. And then, a response. In her mind, Samantha felt a touch, gentle but immensely powerful. The Arcanians had heard her call. They were coming. "They're on their way," she said, opening her eyes. "But I don't know if they'll get here in time." The mechanical arm from the Vexari ship extended toward the trailer. The metal roof began to groan and bend as some kind of force pulled upward. "They're going to rip the roof off," Chuck said, raising his gun uselessly. Samantha made another split-second decision. "Get out of the trailer," she told Chuck. "Now." "I'm not leaving you. Trust me," she insisted, her eyes glowing slightly, with the same blue light as the car. Reluctantly, Chuck jumped out of the trailer. Samantha turned back to the Celestial and placed both hands on the steering wheel. She had never tried to directly control a vehicle before, only communicate with its systems. But there was a first time for everything. With a mental command, she engaged the car's engine. The Celestial roared to life, tires screeching against the trailer floor as it surged forward, crashing through the front of the trailer and onto the highway. Samantha steered the car away from the Vexari beam, pushing it to its top speed within seconds. The scout ship gave chase, staying directly above them. "What is she doing?" the driver asked Chuck as they watched the Celestial race down the highway with no visible driver. "Creating a diversion," Chuck realized. He grabbed the radio. "General, Samantha has taken the car. She's drawing the Vexari away from us. We need air support now." Inside the Celestial, Samantha wasn't physically present. Her body remained in the damaged trailer, but her mind was fully connected to the car's systems. She was the car in a way she had never experienced before. She pushed the Celestial faster, heading away from populated areas. The beacon inside was now fully active, but completely under her control. It sent a continuous stream of data to the approaching Arcanian ship, updating them on the Vexari presence and her location. The scout ship stayed on her tail, joined now by 2 more Vexari craft. They fired warning shots, small energy beams, that struck the road near the car. Just a little longer, Samantha thought, knowing the Arcanians were close. Back at the trailer, Chuck was helping Samantha's unconscious body into an SUV that had arrived as backup. Her physical form was limp, but her mind was elsewhere. "She's still breathing," he told the general over the radio, "but she's completely unresponsive. We're bringing her to the mountain facility now." "And the car?" the general asked, heading west on Highway 16 with 3 Vexari ships in pursuit. "She's leading them away from the city." In the Celestial, Samantha felt her control starting to slip. Maintaining this connection at such a distance was draining her rapidly. The car began to slow as her energy faded. The lead Vexari ship took advantage, descending directly above the Celestial tractor beam activated. The car rose a few feet off the ground, and then the sky exploded with light. A massive ship appeared, as if from nowhere, dropping out of the clouds with breathtaking speed. Unlike the dark, angular Vexari vessels, this ship was sleek and curved, glowing with the same soft blue light as the Celestial. The Arcanian diplomatic vessel had arrived. Energy pulses shot from the Arcanian ship, precisely targeting the Vexari craft's propulsion systems. The scout ship scattered, dropping the Celestial back to the highway. With the last of her strength, Samantha sent a final message through the beacon. "Thank you." The Arcanian ship responded with a pulse of blue light that enveloped the Celestial completely. When it faded, the beacon was gone, removed or deactivated by Arcanian technology. At that moment, Samantha's consciousness snapped back to her body. She gasped and sat up in the back of the SUV, startling Chuck, who was sitting beside her. "The Arcanians," she said urgently. "They're here." "We know," Chuck replied with a smile. "They're all over the news already. The Vexari ships are retreating, and the Arcanian diplomatic vessel is heading to the agreed meeting point in Washington." "It worked," Samantha said, relief washing over her. The beacon worked. 3 days later, Samantha stood beside Chuck Norris, in the White House Rose Garden as the Arcanian ambassador, a tall, slender being with features just human enough to be recognizable, signed the first treaty between Earth and another world. President Monroe shook the ambassador's hand for the cameras making history. The Vexari threat had been mentioned only in private briefings, kept from the public to prevent panic. "So what happens now?" Samantha asked Chuck quietly as they watched. "Now you have a choice," he replied. "The Arcanians have offered to take you with them. They say your mind has developed beyond what they expected. You could learn a lot from them." Samantha considered this. "And my other option? Work with us. Help us understand the technology they're sharing. Be Earth's translator." She looked around at the garden, at the reporters and officials all focused on the historic moment unfolding before them. None of them knew how close they had come to a very different kind of first contact. "I think I'll stay," she decided. "Earth is going to need all the help it can get." Chuck smiled. "Good choice." As they watched the ceremony continue, Frank Pearson from Lux Motors sat in his living room, watching the same event on TV. He had no idea that the strange girl he had thrown out of his dealership was now standing in the rose garden beside Chuck Norris, or that she had just helped save the world. He would never know how close his judgment had come to dooming humanity. Some lessons go unlearned, but others, like Samantha's discovery of her own strength, change everything. By the way, Chuck said to Samantha as they left the rose garden, the general wanted me to ask,